Welcome to the Metal Detecting Podcast, brought to you by XP Metal Detectors. We're digging the plugs and pinpointing the topics you want to hear. Now here's your hosts, Dave Kimball and Grant Hansen.
This show is brought to you by XP Metal Detectors. XP Metal Detectors is a high-end, innovative metal detector company with high-end metal detectors, coils, and pinpointers. For more information, go to xpmetaldetectors.com. For a dealer near you, try a Google search or go to xpteamusa.com. Hello and welcome to the Metal Detecting Podcast. I'm your host, Dave Kimball, coming to you from Central Oklahoma, and I'm joined today by my co-host, Grant Hansen, coming to you from New Jersey. How you doing, Grant?
I am doing well. I'm staying indoors most of the time. Are you staying safe and quarantined?
Oh, yes. Trying to stay away from the corona.
Yeah, it's really, it's nothing we can say we've ever experienced before. It's a real adjustment right now.
Yes, it is. It's something very, very interesting. It's pretty big here and everywhere, and they're talking about even closing more stuff down. So we're all pretty much going to be quarantined at home. And what do? You watch a bunch of metal detecting videos, right?
Right. And, luckily for our hobby, it does provide a good opportunity to get outdoors and social distance from yourself, from other people. You can just go out in a field or a property and you don't have to be near anybody. So that's one positive. We, don't have to stop doing what we're doing in that capacity.
Yeah. They can't stop us from metal detecting. Not yet.
Right. But, they say it could be 6 to 8 weeks, maybe more. My daughter's been home from school now and trying to homeschool her and keep her from not going stir crazy. And we're only 1 week in, so it's going to be a challenge.
Yeah. My granddaughter lives with us. She's still on spring break right now, but I guess for the rest of the semester, their school is closed. So. And my school also, I'm going to OU, and somebody on the OU campus came down with the coronavirus, and they're shut that building down for the rest of the semester. So it's interesting. We're going to be doing everything online, and we'll see how it plays out and how long it plays out. Hopefully it don't play out too long. I'm already getting tired of it.
Yeah, I'm really hoping it doesn't. And for your online schooling, I know a lot of the stuff you do with engineering and stuff is hands-on, right? So it's got to be kind of an adjustment just doing it all online.
Yeah. I already got an email from one of my professors on a internal combustion lab, and he was talking about filming the experiments and sending us all the parameters that we need to do and then just write papers about it. So I think they're going to try to work me to death.
Yeah, one way or the other, right? Whether it's at the school or from the comfort of your own home, it's going to be a challenge.
Yes. And it's going to be even worse at home because I'm going to have a little kid running around too.
Right, exactly. Well, XP Team USA is trying to, brighten the lives of everybody who's doing this, and we're actually calling ourselves XP Quarantine USA for the next 2 weeks.
That's right. Yeah, XP Quarantine USA.
Yeah, so basically what that means is starting this past Wednesday, the 18th, every day for the next 2 weeks, we're going to be doing contests and giveaways throughout our Facebook page, and we're going to do one tonight on the podcast. Your chance to win hats, swag, shirts, pinpointers, and also a big chance to win an ORX. So I recommend you stay tuned to what we're doing. Check out our Facebook page for all the daily contests.
Yeah, that's awesome. That lightens the blow a little bit. You get a chance to win a brand new metal detector, pinpointers, all kinds of cool swag. Just all you got to do is make sure you subscribe to our XP Team USA Facebook group page and just keep in touch to what we're doing and watch some of our videos on YouTube. Sometimes we have stuff on there. Like he said, we're doing a giveaway contest tonight on the podcast, and you're going to have a chance sometime to win an ORX.
Yeah. So, and listen closely to the show tonight, because we are going to ask a question later in the show, and you're going to have a chance to win not just an XP Team USA hoodie, but one of our awesome new camo XP Team USA caps. So those are really cool.
Oh, yeah, they are. Today we talked to Billy Newman. Billy Newman is a historian that wrote a few books and is very interesting to talk to.
Yeah, he's actually an authority on a gentleman named Robert Erskine. And Robert Erskine was George Washington's Surveyor-General. So essentially, George Washington's lead map maker, and very, very important figure, but a little known figure in American history.
And you went and attended one of his lectures, did you not?
I did, yeah. He gave a lecture in a bordering town of mine. We're all made up of what's called the English neighborhood. So what's now about 7 or 8 towns at one time was just one big town. And it was Dutch settlement, and, you know, it goes back to the 1600s. And Washington was in this area a lot. There was a lot of Revolutionary War activity here. So it was really exciting for me to go out and see him speak about this. And that's how I learned all about Robert Erskine. And I said, we got to get this guy on our show.
All right. Well, when we come back, let's talk to Billy Newman.
All right.
If you are looking for more information about XP products such as dealers or updates, then check out MetalDetectorsAmericas.com.
Hello, this is Daniel from XP Metal Detectors Americas, and I just wanted to let you know about the XP Metal Detectors Americas.com website, which is full of information on the K-use metal detectors and the ORX metal detector. Both are wireless and do all aspects of metal detecting, which is gold prospecting, coins, jewelry, and relics.
We'd like to welcome a very special guest to our podcast tonight. He is a New Jersey historian and photographer, and author of Rutherford, A Brief History, and Rutherford, Images of America. And he's a noted authority on George Washington's Geographer and Surveyor-General to the American Army. Let's give a warm welcome to Billy Newman. How you doing, Billy?
Oh, I'm real good. Thanks for the interview.
Yeah, thanks so much for joining us. I think we're going to have a really, really interesting conversation tonight. But first, can you tell us how long you've been passionate about American history and what sparked your interest?
Oh, wow, yeah. Well, it started way past normal school hours, and was really well into my 30s when I started to kind of figure out where everything was in my world and how it made sense. My father was always a storyteller. He died when I was in high school, and I started to try and kind of claw back his memories as they slipped away in time, and some of his stories sifted into researched histories, which then turned into a second career in historic preservation in New Jersey. The Borough of Rutherford actually sent me through university certification program for historic preservation, so I am actually a CHP.
Yeah, so you've authored a few books about your hometown in Rutherford, New Jersey. Can you tell us a little bit about them?
Oh, yeah, sure. They were initially written at the request of competing and now co-joined publishers. The first one was Rutherford, A Brief History, and that was for History Press in Charleston, South Carolina. And the second was Rutherford, Images of America, which was for Arcadia Publishing in Charleston. The two publishers merged under one roof recently, about 2 years ago or so, and but they're still in Charleston. They're the most popular and comprehensive books on the history of the borough of Rutherford. And but all this happened really after being a contributing author on Robert Erskine to the book Revolutionary Bergen County, The Road to Independence, and that was compiled by Barbara Merchant from Leonia.
Yeah. So, and your current profession, you are a photographer. How does that help with your historic research?
Yeah, it's kind of a roundabout way, but not really. I was trained as an assistant photographer in New York City, very competitive market. Assistant photographers help photographers, put together everything. We actually, more often than not, we are the guys that kind of run the whole circus. So there's a lot of responsibility for precision and results, and that kind of led to being extremely thorough in producing solutions for my own photographic clients as I became a photographer, and then just finding the best practices and results for factual research. I believe that photography is pure magic, really is. It always has been, but it's really just a fixable reproduction that can be transferred, meaning it's something that you can actually fix. We have a thing called fixer in photography when you develop images, and it reproduces something, usually in a two-dimensional way, and you can actually pick that thing up and it could be transferred. I could give you a picture, you could hang it on a wall, or it could be an image on a computer screen or a television or, any number of different things. So really, when photography happened, it was pure magic, and it still is today.
And has your approach to it changed when it started to transition off of film into the digital realm?
Yes and no. What it is that photography is still being someplace and pushing a button, no matter what it is. Pull a string, push a button, turn something on, turn something off. And that's the thing that you have to always do. All the other stuff, if you don't push the button, all the other stuff doesn't mean anything. You can do whatever you want in Photoshop, but if there is nothing to do in Photoshop, if there's no picture that was originally made or photographed, who cares? So a lot of it is about just realizing that. So it's a very Zen thing once you understand what it really is. That it doesn't make any difference if it's on glass plates or film or, on digital or any number of different things that may come down the road.
So while you're doing research for your books, when you're looking at old documents, even the ones you can't touch, are you allowed to photograph them?
It all depends on the conditions of the condition of the materials, the situation for possible reproduction or even, decent reproduction, the institution and their leniency in their copyrights, meaning the materials that they owned and how you can copy them. Photography is just reproduction again. Many times you can't remove delicate or valuable artifacts to an ideal photographic studio, although I've been paid to do that. And many times the institution has better reproductions already that you can you can't make as good as what they already have. So, and sometimes those are at a nice price for very simple usage. But photography in all its forms is just one of the very best ways to preserve and protect and actually communicate history into the future. We now have an entire field of digital preservation of materials, and it's a very interesting field.
Yeah. I mean, it's growing and growing and really helping those of us who do research. So there were a lot of important figures that gained international recognition and praise for their efforts during the Revolutionary War. Robert Erskine, while he's not a household name, he was indeed a really important figure. Can you tell us quickly who he was and why his role was important?
Yeah, we know him first off as kind of an educated young man from north of Edinburgh, Scotland, and he becomes a really esteemed British inventor in London. He moves to London. A lot of people notice what he's doing. He becomes sponsored into the prestigious Fellowship of Royal Society, the FRS. He uses FRS throughout his life. That always ends up at the end of his name. Robert Erskine, FRS, Fellow Royal Society. He's sponsored actually by Ben Franklin and a couple other inventors. When he's asked to move to and manage a British-owned mining company in the American colonies, he educates himself to become a master in iron mining practices, and he's a loyal representative to the crown at that point. He comes over to the Royal Colony of New Jersey in 1771. He moves his family to Ringwood, New Jersey, which is the northern part of our state, very close to the New York borderline. It was at one point part of Bergen County. Now it's part of Passaic County. He immediately looks to improve the mining operation and the surrounding areas around the mines. So he sets up a lot of roads and stores and develops local commerce as he travels all over New Jersey, and he travels all over to New York and Pennsylvania. He's always trying to drum up business for these mines. He is really an ambassador for England and their interest in mining. England had great mines, and they were forging a lot of iron. But anything that was done in the colonies had to be shipped to England so that they could then forge it and bring it back to the colonies and sell it to us at a higher value. So this is all happening while England is increasingly tightening these colonial regulations and been unfairly taxing the population for its wars. So this restricted local development, manufacturing, and freedom in general. And this is what he witnessed as he was traveling through all these colonies. You know, he pretty much became kind of disgusted with the whole thing because he was a businessman. He could see what was going on as far as the freedom of business. And he also, while he was traveling, he created all these great maps of the areas that he visited so that he could return to them or remember who the people were that he saw and stuff. So by 1775, he was extremely disturbed by the British rule in the colonies and the carnage at Lexington and Concord. His loyalty dissolves into outright rebellion. I mean, it's pretty fast. And this is really against the 1776 occupations in New York, which is very close by to Ringwood, New Jersey. So at this point, he begins to really formulate plans to resist and actually destroy English invasion of his new homeland. And this is through the use of his iron mines and the forges that now he's using. He's creating stoves and ammunition. People believe that he created quite a bit of cannonballs. He creates and he equips his own militia in northern Bergen County. And because he was a talented surveyor, General George Washington requested that the Continental Congress appoint him to become the Surveyor-General of his entire army. So, that's kind of a capsulization of him. He then goes on to lead a really confidential company of trained surveyors and map makers, and they will create over 200 detailed military maps of New York, New Jersey, Pennsylvania, Connecticut, Maryland. And this is all at the direct supervision. This is all at the direct supervision and at the request of George Washington.
Very, very interesting story. And happy for us and our freedoms that he went through.
Yeah. He, you could look at him and say, well, this is a person that started out as a terrific loyalist, that was married to the crown through business and quickly realized that he was in jeopardy of his freedom by all the things that the British monarchy and the bureaucracy that was behind that, the wars that were being made by England and France and Holland, and he realized, well, we're just being oppressed because of this. So he immediately decided that he wanted to figure out the best advantage to himself, his family, his mines, and he saw the writing on the wall.
Yeah, and George Washington kind of had a similar situation, right? I mean, he was an American, but an officer in the British Army, and he just didn't feel like he was getting the respect or knew he wasn't going to get into the ultimate leadership spot that he wanted. So, they soured, their defeater against themselves.
Yeah, Washington was also a surveyor himself, and he also was a map maker. So he saw Erskine's talent in what he was doing while he was traveling and making maps.
Yeah, so because he's not one of the more common names in American history, research must have been pretty challenging. How did you go about that?
Yeah, the first thing is that there's no known image of Robert Erskine, so people can't hang a picture on the wall in his honor. And a lot of the historic research and writing is always pulling together, any kind of research like this is pulling together large and small threads and putting them into some kind of contextual sense. A lot of it is visiting repositories and taking notes. A lot of it is collating information with other known facts that surround the primary subject that you're researching. You're doing a lot of cutting and pasting of words and all the representative ideas, and that takes a lot of thought. That takes a lot of idea. How should this move on? How should this be, stylized into something that's readable or, educational or entertaining?
And what were some of your actual greatest resources that you were able to use when finding that information?
Yeah. His only real biographer is Albert Husser, and this is a book Albert did in the 1930s, 40s. Can't remember when he published, but so any Erskine researcher starts there and somewhat retraces Albert's steps into all the repositories, such as like Ringwood Manor, New Jersey Historic Society in Newark, Morgan Library in New York, Library of Congress, and of course the New York Historic Society in New York City. New York Historic Society has the vast amount of Erskine map materials.
While not born in the U.S. colonies, he was instrumental to the American cause. What was his early life like?
Well, he was born in 1735. And this was into a notable family of ministers in Dunfermline, Scotland. That's like 17 miles north of Edinburgh. He was actually able to attend Edinburgh University, but he was not able to attain a professorship there. That somewhat changed his life in many ways because that's probably what he was aiming for. After that, he moves to London and he begins a small business of inventing and, scientific imagination.
Yeah, and in addition to the map making, you did mention that he is an was an inventor. Can you tell us some of the contraptions that he invented?
Yeah, and it's funny because I have a feeling that there was quite a few more things, but we know that Erskine invented a lot of diverse things. He invented this continual water pump. Controlling water was really an important thing, particularly like when you live on an island like England, and so water pumps were really important to try and move water around. He did a lot of work on azimuth measuring instruments, and that was to find positions at sea with a couple observations of the sun. Again, very important while you're out in the middle of the ocean, you don't know where you are. And he also worked with like what we would call Astrolabes, which again were ways to kind of describe where you were or to put yourself on a map and say, we have to go south or north or east. But he also practiced a lot of land surveying, and he engineered public water resources in London. During the early days of the Revolutionary War, he formulated a really massive chain to be hung across the Hudson River. And then he developed this really nasty cluster of spiked timbers that would be submerged to ram ships as they tried to sail up the Delaware River or the Hudson River to attack West Point. These spiked timbers would come up and actually puncture the holes of the ships, the British ships, and sink them as they, either sink them or disable them so that they could be shelled. And this was a way to actually protect the Hudson River from having England traverse that waterway. Those were like the superhighways of what we have today. So he really had a diverse portfolio of inventions. And I think a lot of it was passionate. He just saw something that needed to be thought out better, and he got to work.
Is there any evidence that you've come across that one of those giant spikes that he put in the Hudson River worked?
It's hard to say. He talked increasingly with Ben Franklin about putting them in the Delaware, which is a wider body of water, of course. The chains didn't work. We kind of know that the chains didn't work. They were hard to maneuver. The boats basically sailed through them or around them, meaning these were chains that were, again, stuck in the water. Maybe during the night they would have worked, but during the day, a lot of times they were able to maneuver around them. The British were unable to maneuver around them. So, it would have been fun to know that some of their hulls were punctured pretty damagedly.
Oh, yeah.
But we don't really have a lot of reports on a lot of this stuff, like how effective they were.
We'll be right back with Billy Newman. XP has introduced its new ORX machine, a high-end machine at a mid-range price. The ORX has 4 factory preset programs, 2 gold, 2 coins, also 2 user programs. The ORX comes with a high-frequency coil and is compatible with the X35 coils. The ORX is now available in the USA.
Hi, this is Dave D.
Hi, this is Sonia.
R.C. Dunn.
This is Alan. Yeah. We're the Minnesota Beach Boys.
This is Kendall.
This is David Kimball.
This is Grant Hansen.
Dean Center. Lynn Quelland. Hi, this is John.
Josh Kimmel.
Cameron Macer.
Pete Sorrell.
And we are
XP Team USA.
And you are listening to the Metal Detecting Podcast.
And we're back with Billy Newman. Yeah, so is it right that Erskine started off as a soldier before an official map maker?
Not necessarily. He was a businessman first and foremost. He really did see the writing on the wall with Lexington and Concord, and he formed his own militia in 1775, just around that time. But of course, this was before the actual start of the Revolutionary War in our America. Basically, he formed this militia, and this was somewhat of a common thing in around this Bergen County area, Passaic area, because he really wanted the security around his mines and to have a ready army to possibly defend his operations. So we can't necessarily call him, like a winter soldier or something like that, but he had the idea that military readiness was important. So by him putting together this militia, and it was a decent sized militia, and it was also people that he could call readily because a lot of them were employees of the mining company.
Mm. And do you know, did he actually see any battle himself, or he was more just behind the scenes organizing and leading?
Yeah, but more organizing and leading. He didn't really, he may have done military maneuvers. He may have readied people that way, but I don't believe that he had a lot of battle scars that he could describe.
That's the way I'd approach it.
Sure.
And this may be a silly question, but why were the maps so important at that time?
Yeah, maps are really basic information about known and unknown areas. If you're military maps particularly can lead you to resources and friends and favorable lands or battle or forage areas, or even away from your enemy and dead ends. You could come to, we were fortunate here in New Jersey because when Washington was retreating across the upper part of our state and through the Hackensack Valley, he chose to go directly to several fords and rivers, and he knew that from maps, not necessarily just Erskine maps, but also people on the way said keep going this way. And if he kind of dawdled, or if he decided to take a little bit of a different route, the Revolutionary War would never have happened because he would have been just collected, bottled up, and taken back to be hung. So maps are really ways to tell people, to go this way or not go this way, or this is friendly, or this is an area that you can find food at. One concept about why England lost the Revolutionary War was they were, first of all, fighting on unfamiliar land without information and direction, and they didn't have any real direction afforded by maps. So Robert Erskine provided this incredible advantage by producing factual information about the land that he had been on, saw, and what his company of surveyors and map makers displayed for the American Army. These were really important military maps.
And how many maps did Robert Erskine create, at least the ones that we know of?
Yeah, we believe that he did about 250 large and small maps, what they would also call contractions, and these turned into large finished maps that we can kind of fully accredit to Erskine. And there was he died from pneumonia at Ringwood on October 2nd, 1780, just as he was finishing map number 113. Now, 250 maps originally, small maps, big maps. A lot of these maps came down into 113 maps that we know that Erskine particularly had his hand on.
Oh, yeah. So are any of these maps still available for viewing? And if so, how and where can you find them?
Yeah, it varies by institution. For example, you can make an appointment to view at about social distancing the actual map that Washington kept in his brass pocket. I actually have seen that map, and they keep you away from it, and they will open it up for you, and they will show it to you, and you can't examine it by hand, but you can see how it was effective for Washington. And the actual artifact is amazing to see. The New York Historic Society has original letters. The New Jersey Historic Society has letters and sketches that are original to Robert Erskine that you can actually take out of a folder and hold in your hand. Those are interesting because I found a sketch of an invention that he made, and I've never seen it before. So that was a terrific discovery for me. The vast majority of original Erskine maps are really carefully archived in the New York Historical Society. No one really gets to pull out the originals there, but you can view and photograph reverse photostats of the maps, and many of these photostats are extremely accurate and really do tell exactly what the maps were supposed to make.
How did these maps survive all these years? I mean, were they taken care of at the time because they just had a sense that these would be historically significant? Did we just get lucky that they're all still around?
Yeah, some of the people that actually worked with Erskine, Simeon DeWitt, actually had, he was kind of the appointed successor of Erskine, and so he did a lot of the preservation of the maps. A lot of these were collected by private people that eventually donated things to New Jersey Historic Society or New York Historical Society. And from that point on, once these societies like New York Historic Society, I forget, they were established in 1812 or 1818 or something like that. So they were really early. New Jersey Historical Society is 1858, I think. And so they had an idea how valuable these materials were, and they actually started to think, how can we best put them in places where they won't be harmed?
That's fantastic. How do you think modern relic hunters like us can use maps like Erskine's to help with our own research when we're looking for properties to metal detect on?
Sure. Well, the cool thing about Erskine maps is that they're pretty damn accurate. And they describe some of our historic roads in New Jersey. Everything's historic one way or another. You look at something and you go, how long has that been around? About 200 years. And so the roads are really important. The landowners that were alongside the roads. Again, Erskine was describing friends and foes, the rivers, the businesses, the actual mines that he worked, the houses that had people, along these roads, the geographic features. These all kind of transcribe to the exact same things that are existing today. In fact, I am trying to get a project going between the New York Public Library and the New York Historic Society to overlay modern maps onto Erskine maps. And at that point, you can do a thing called map warping. And what it does is we can then use points that we know that existed back then to today and make those our anchor points. And then you can warp the maps to actually fit what we see today. So a lot of these little anchor points are still existent. A lot of these maps can just point to precise locations on modern maps that you would never really know, or you might have forgotten, or maybe it was just not discovered yet, of places that relic hunters can actually go and, with the permission of people, go and see if you can find things. My house itself is on a 1876 map, and it's the only house in a really big area that's now overly developed. I know that my property hasn't been so overly turned over. It hasn't been one of these things where we've done a ton of excavation. So, I'm always thinking of having friends come over with a little relic work and see if they could find anything here.
Well, I was just going to say, I'll connect with you after. I can find some stuff and make a nice display case for you.
Yeah.
There you go. Yeah, it's that kind of thing to see maps. Really, maps are so incredibly interesting, and when they're good maps and when they're relevant to what you're doing, it's amazing. You know, the amount of stuff that you can figure out what's going on. When we did the presentation in Leonia, and people were actually seeing the maps from 1777 or 8 or 9 and understanding what the English neighborhood was and that it surrounded them immediately, you know, the revelation, the enlightenment is incredible.
Oh, yeah. And it's so crazy that you could see them old maps that they made way back in the 1700s, and you can look at Google Earth nowadays or our maps nowadays and how closely they match. What was some of the techniques that they actually used back then?
Oh, a lot of it was taking known lengths of chain and starting at one point and actually getting a bearing, a compass bearing, and laying out the chain to, let's say, a known waterway or a rock that you know is not going to be moving for many a millennium. And a lot of it was then describing all these things and saying the distance from here was to here. This road went this way and then curved this way. A lot of the maps you see all these points of longitude and latitude, and they were getting pretty precise in understanding how, you know, all this mapping would work with all compass points and with understanding the Astrolabes and all these different ways to measure things. They were able to say, this is pretty precise and it ain't going to change very much.
Yeah, it makes
a lot of it is measurement, a lot of it is compass points, a lot of it is just, you know, they had very interesting instruments that they could take into the field and actually make these measurements and then record them, you know, while they were there. Field notes were very important.
Yeah, I was going to say, it makes us, you know, take for granted the stuff we have today, like drones and cameras and GPS, and these guys were really...
I mean, Google Earth is just amazing.
Right. You can imagine how long it would take them to map out a good size area.
Oh, sure. Yeah, and they would come back, you know, just to make sure that that was right. And particularly when they were doing maps at the request of Washington, Erskine mapped Morristown over and over and over again. And, you know, many times it was the same map, but they wanted to make sure that they had it right. And other places, Princeton and, you know, places up by West Point or even very much around Bergen County, because we were known as the neutral ground, which we certainly weren't. The British and the Continental armies would come through all of Bergen County and just forage for anything. They would just go to people and go, we're taking your cows. And so, you know, knowing places that you can hide your cows, or, you know, knowing places that probably the British wouldn't go to, or the Americans wouldn't come looking for food, maybe that helped a lot too.
Yeah. So is there anything that you are currently working on that you would like to share?
I got a couple outlines on books. Nothing that I can really describe. One is really about a house and how a person finds out that the house that they're looking for, they've been in for a year or two. It's kind of a weird little mystery that begins very early in the book and then ends with the question. There's a question that's asked to the person, and then they find out the answer by themselves, meaning they look and they go, yep, that's your grandfather's place. So, yeah, it's a really neat thing. And it actually happens. Very true. The building is in my town. And there's, I do a lot of work on National Register stuff, meaning we do write-ups for National Register of Historic Place nominations. And we just completed one. I was with a people of 5 or 6 people that did a tremendous nomination for National Register, which we all believe is kind of like the final, you know, note on whatever thing we're describing. And this happens to be a recording studio, which is easily described as one of the greatest temples of sound in jazz in the world. And if I gave you the address, you'd never find it. But it is an amazing place. So, yeah, a lot of writing like that, a lot of photography on that. And so always something to do. My website is for my commercial work is Newman Photo, and that's NEUMANNPHOTO, newmanphoto.com. Not a great thing that describes the entirety of what I do, but yeah, it's pretty fun to look at the pictures.
Well, thanks so much for joining us. We really enjoyed listening to the stories and learning about Robert Erskine and all the other information you were able to tell us. I'm excited to hear more about your upcoming projects that you're working out. The one with the house sounds very interesting. So please keep me posted on that.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, very much so. Thank you so much for the interest in Erskine. I think it's a tremendous story that really resonates even today, and particularly its maps really resonate even today.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, definitely. Yeah, thanks a lot, and it was great talking to you.
Yeah,
Sure.
Take care.
All right.
My pleasure.
We'll see.
Thank you.
Check us out online at xpteamusa.com. This segment is brought to you by Omega Mill Pouches, the official digging pouch of XP Team USA. If you're looking for a rugged, hunt-tested, washable pouch, look no further than Omega Mill. Get on eBay and search Omega Mill Pouches. That's OMEGAMILL.
All right, we're back. Billy Newman is very interesting. A lot of cool history, and I think you even got lucky and scored a permission there, didn't you?
Yeah, I'm definitely going to follow up on that one. I promise you that. And I was particularly fascinated by how the surveyors at that time used chains to measure out. Could you imagine that process to measure out the length of something?
I couldn't imagine. You would think that would take a long time, because I have even read that before, that they used to call them like so many links, such a distance. It would be called links, and it was a reference to the chains that they would measure. I couldn't imagine how long it would take, because there's so much property and land involved in all this, and they get it pretty close. So it's a pretty interesting process, and I guess they were a lot more efficient back then than we really think.
Yeah, you kind of, even though it's only a few hundred years ago, you think, Stone Ages sometimes. But yeah, I guess they were pretty sophisticated and made use of the materials that they had at the time.
All right, well, don't forget about our contests all this whole month, 14 days of XP Quarantine USA. And as we mentioned earlier in this podcast, we got a contest today on this show.
Yeah, so here's your chance to win an XP Team USA hoodie and XP Team USA camo cap. Here is the question. What initials did Robert Erskine put after his name whenever he signed his name? Don't answer in the chat. I want you to send me an email with your answer to xpteamusagrant@gmail.com. Again, don't answer in the chat. Just send me an email. The question again is, what initials did Robert Erskine put after his name when he signed his name? Anyone who answers correctly, we will put them in the digital bowl and pick out a lucky winner.
Yes. All right. Yeah, send Grant a email at xpteamusagrant@gmail.com, or send him a PM on Facebook.
Yep, that'll work too.
All right. And all correct answers will be put into a randomizer, and we will draw the winner in less than 2 weeks, and we will announce the winner on our next podcast show on the 3rd.
I can't believe it's going to be April already.
I know. Yeah, this month went by pretty quick. This year is going by pretty quick so far.
Very. Actually, I kind of hope it goes on real quick with everything that's going on.
All right. Hopefully the quarantine will be over with by then.
Yes, I hope so. Fingers crossed. But in the meantime, there's been some great YouTube videos going out. I know Gary Blackwell has put out some on the XP Metal Detectors channel, and he's also got on his own channel, on his Skill School channel, the Detexting channel, where people are texting him questions while he's out in the field and answering them. Very, very informative. I'm learning some good stuff.
Yeah, that's very cool. All right. Yeah, and also, if you want to listen to some more podcasts, go to Beyond Sight and Sound with Josh Kimmel and check him out.
Yep, Josh always puts on a great show. He's got great guests and great activities. So now's the perfect time when you're indoors. Check him out and give it a listen.
Yeah, you can even go back and check out some of his archives.
Yeah, he goes back years, so he's got plenty of them.
All right, well, we'll see everybody April 3rd.
All right, take care.
All right, see ya.
Get that permission, put the coil to the soil, and we'll catch you next time right here on the Metal Detecting Podcast, brought to you by XP Metal Detectors.